going to finish this painting that I started with a pour. Hopefully you saw that the drawing was already on there, so I don't need to worry about doing that afterwards. Got a couple little speckles on there. I'm just going to brush those off. So I printed, I have some color prints, and then I also printed this larger in black and white. And then I did my line drawing so I could figure out things were. And then I made a copy of that line drawing so that I could play with my values and make sure that everything that is in the shadow that would describe the form, I can throw that shadow in first. And then I won't accidentally have something light here or lighter here than it is here, because wherever the light hits, I need all of the light area to be lighter than the dark area in the shadow. It seems simple, but sometimes when we go to paint, we forget. And if we like see reflected light over here, we accidentally sometimes make it that bright, and it should never be that bright. I often have a couple different photographs, even if they're not all exactly the same, because I'm looking at different things and photographs only show so much. So anyway, so I've got those there, and I can keep looking at them as I paint, and that should help. To start, I'm going to grab, I need to grab some yellow and get some nice, I want some nice brights here, but I also need to get my darks in there. So I'm thinking here, what do I want to start with? I want to start with my lights or my darks. Now we're dealing with primary colors, so we've got to get some copper colors here. Might have been a little bit too much red. Let's see, that's pretty red. I want that a little bit more orange. If you can see on my palette, I have 2 yellows and 2 blues and 2 reds. My initial fill for the palette was getting used up, and so I just filled the other part so it could be drying while I'm still painting, and I don't have to sit and let it wait. That's a little bit better. I want that just to be a little bit more orange, and I'm just going to drop that in now. I know this might seem a little bit bright, but we'll see what happens to it. And I've got some big areas to paint, but I want some nice thin strokes. So if I need to switch brushes, I'll do that. I'm just going to throw some of this color in so that I can begin to change the color that I have there. I don't want a blue dog on this one. Not a bad thing, just don't feel like having this dog be a blue dog. Now I've got some color I'm going to put up behind here, but I want that to show through a little bit. I've got basically painting the negative there. When we paint in watercolors, we're often working in layers. Doing the same thing here. I've got all this paint on my brush, so I'm just going to go ahead and use it up. So basically I'm painting what's behind this ear, but in order for this ear to look like an ear, I have to paint the negative space around it. Let's see, I'll lose track of what I'm... I'm going to grab some of that nice bright yellow to let it kind of mix in with some of this, and it will kind of reflect down here, so I've got it in a couple different areas. Let it mix on my paper a little bit. my thin brush for some of this. It's getting a little bit too thick. It's going to be gone over again, but I just want to get a little background. We often work in layers, so here's more layers. Now, I'm going to see what happens with my brush stroke when I change to this. So for my shadow, though I want some of the blues in there, when I get really dark over here, I'm going to have the blues in there. I want some of the oranges in the shallower shadows. But I'm going to play with this one right here and see if I can get the colors that I want in here. If I add a little bit of that orange. Do I want to add blue for shadow? Or a little bit of blue and a little bit of brown? What do I feel like doing? So, because this is a pour, I don't really have a background that I can see what will happen. So there's some brown. It's darker definitely, but it isn't really more vibrant. I think I kind of like the blues in there. So I think I'll be shading with those blues. Let's see, I want to make some of these highlighted areas. Sometimes I have a hard time talking and painting at the same time, so we'll just see what happens here. Okay, I am losing some of my shadows and trying to figure out the values, and so I'm going to start plopping in some of these areas here. I feel like I'm kind of exploring right now with the brush. Like I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, so I'm trying different things. And I don't want this color over there. This is all in the shadow, but if I let this mix on the page, then I think it will be more successful. I'm liking that color in there, but I just need to be careful to not use it everywhere. So, check my shadow shapes out. And I can go right over that eye because that should all be in the shadow. Just to give that a little bit of depth. It's always nice to keep switching out the colors and the values that you use so that it doesn't become too same, you know, stagnant. Let's see, I've got that blue nose to do right there. Just gonna go ahead and go over the nose because I need to make sure that it stays in that shadow. Lose that there. Okay, let's see, we're gonna pull. Let's get some reds in there. Put a little bit of red in your darks, then it's a much more vibrant dark. I'm trying to not just use a stroke that is so random that it doesn't feel like it goes with the fur that I'm using, or the texture, no matter what you're doing. Just keeping that texture in there is really nice to not lose. It's hard to put the texture back in if you lose it with your brush strokes. Bit of that orange vibrance in there. And again, we're painting what isn't the ear. Now this is a shadow area over here, as I have on my little reminder paper, but it's not as deep in the shadows as this is, so. see. All my paint strokes need to support the object that I'm painting. That doesn't mean you have to go in the direction that the hair grows. You could go backwards from it, but you shouldn't be growing. If you're trying to describe hair growing in one direction, you shouldn't be going in the complete diagonal of it. You should be using that. Spaniels have these long, beautiful, pretty ears. So we're going to be adding just these little bit of hair strokes to it so that it shows off that hair coming down. And I think what I'm going to do is keep these in the brighter values right up here, and then I'm going to come down underneath and put some of those shadows in. Now, let's see, I missed a little bit of this value right here. I just want to bring some of that over here a little bit. I'm going to have to wait till this is a little bit drier to get that nose in, but I think that'll have that little soft muzzle there. Soft edge right there. Need that light to hit it there. So long hair, long strokes, short hair, short strokes. I got to keep reminding myself of that. And even if I use the same puddle of paint and I go over it after it's dry, it will be darker because I'm layering. So see, and the darker I get, the harder it is to see those pencil lines, so I've got to make sure I those deep darks in there. Again, negative space. I'm doing the chin now and let negative space come through. I want this part to really recede. Grab some of that. feels really dark when it's wet, so we're going to see what happens when it's dry. This is not going to be a tight, detailed painting. It's going to be a little bit looser. Whoops. Hold on to the brush. I think I need a seatbelt, huh? Okay, put some of those reds in there because I want that to be a vibrant, I don't want that to be a black hole of Calcutta. I want to be able to feel that there's depth, but have it be interesting. Now I think what I'm going to need to do before I get too much farther is I need to get the shadow landing here. So I'm going to grab some of those same colors that I had up there. Let's see what I can come up with. Let's see. What if we use some of this? So it's a little bit more purpley. It kind of pulls those in there. Let me grab a little bit more blue. And this is a surface, so I'm not going to paint this direction. I'm going to paint this direction. I've got to paint the negative of those hairs and these hairs. Add as much pigment as I want right here. Now that shadow. Come over here. Some of that shadow gonna be over here. So if I think directionally, if that body's casting a shadow, the paw will cast a shadow, right? This may not make sense till I get the shadow on the pot itself, but and I'm putting this shadow on the body over here because I am happy if it bleeds in there. I'm just fine with that. This ear's got darker underneath it. Should be casting a shadow there. Looking a little flat there. Let's get some of these. Sometimes I start painting and I think, oh, I'm going to make this really loose, and then I start getting tighter and tighter and tighter. You probably do the same thing. My palette's slowly moving away where you can't see it. I'll try to bring that over a little bit more. Let's see. That's not what I want. See if I can get those to bleed together, but just don't want to. I've got that mask right there, so I don't have to worry about keeping the white of the eye. And all I'm worrying is the iris. I don't care about, the iris. I don't care about the pupil. And let's pull. Probably should have done this first, but it's okay. The whites of a good dog's eyes or people's eyes are not necessarily white. Okay. Let me get a nice blue-black here. And boy, it's hard to see what's what over there. I can't see it very well, so I'm trying to figure it out with my darks. Blue and it's very brown. Let's see. So I'm going to keep these shadows. I've just added water. And I know I'm going to go over this on another layer again, so if things bleed together, it's not a big deal. Keep blotting that brush. Making sure I've got some blues in there because that just feels more like a nose. Do that. A bit of a bit going around, and as soon as that's dry, I'll add a little bit more to it. This yellow you see right there is my masking. Now, because that goes right into the little fuzzy fur underneath. Let's see. Sometimes I think I know what color I need, and then I go to paint it, and I think, no, that's not the right one. Way too much paint there. See how when I put that orange right next to it, it bled in? That will make that nose look nice and soft. Now I've got to double check the direction that that fur is growing. Weird spot here I gotta address. And if these edges are too hard, I'm not gonna stress about it because I can go back in and just soften them. I'm getting the right feel there. Now I need paint this. I need to get that same feel over here. A little bit different, but I think I might be able to get it with just a little bit lighter value. Bringing it down there. Now we've got that dark, those dark lips. I don't want to paint like a line, it'll look like a smile. This is the lost and found line. Let's see. Kind of like a messy palette because I can just reach over and grab some nondescript color and drop it in. And let's see, it's a little bit, I kind of want more of a blue green there. Well, that might seem weird, but okay, now I did one eye, but I didn't do the other eye. This eye is in the light, and that eye is not in the light. So I don't need to do it at the same time because I'm not treating them the same. So for example, the whites of the eye are going to be that darker shadow color. You won't see that. But I am going to keep it pretty brown and not blue. I'll add a little bit of blue for the black part, but the eyeball will be pretty brown. Now when I come to this part, there are little tiny hairs sticking in the eye. So I can only paint those by painting the negative. Going to be a pretty dark eye, and in order to get that same feel but without the brightness of the color, I'm actually just gonna lift a little bit like that. Now I've got to add some more darks here around the eye, and then it'll soften the edges. So much for not getting too detailed in my painting, huh? Here I go. Getting all detailed again. Let's get, actually, so if I want the black to bleed through here, I've got to put this color on beneath it again because it dried before I finished it. dogs don't need mascara, they got black eyeliner, right? It's a little bit too pronounced there. Let's go back in. I want all my strokes to be the same. Yep. Another way to get texture in your brush. Don't hold on to it, right? Blue there. Well, let's see, what do we need here? Let's get this to turn the corner. Can't have a white area in the shadow, right? There's no way you have white in the middle of the dark. Now, this is not my area of focus, so I don't necessarily want to put nice even fine lines in there. I just don't want it to be pushing forward. I want this to push back, so I put a little glaze over that. I mixed this yellow and brown, and it's got a green tinge to it. I'm not liking that so much. So let's add a bit of red, see what happens. Too much red. that in there, and the fact that the paint is still wet and it bleeds on one side, bonus. Now we need dark, dark here. And the pupil, pupil is always round in a person. In animals it can be other shapes. But the eyelid casts a shadow. And that's looking just like a weird shape there. It shouldn't be. So soften that. Sometimes the shadow that lands on the eyelid actually goes down into the pupil. So, well, I think I'm just about done here. This is exactly what I thought I was going to paint when I first started this, but it was fun to do. I gotta be careful to not be too even with either my strokes or my color, because I don't want it to look the same everywhere. Gotta vary those strokes. With hair, it's these little Y shapes and V shapes that tend to make it look more real. And you're kind of painting what the shapes are between the hairs where the shadows are. Now I've got that shadow there. I need to link these shadows so that it makes sense. That part of the dog's ear is turning the corner. So part of it's more in shadow. All right, when it dries, I will pull the mask off.